Well, hello, everybody. Rather than take time in class to go over the syllabus, I thought I would record this Zoom presentation and do just that. So I'm going to be sharing the syllabus, and we're going to go over it, talk a little bit about some of the nitty-gritty and mechanics of the course. So first of all, welcome to Bio 2510, Anatomy and Physiology 1. I'm Bob Ratterman. I'll be your instructor for the next 15 weeks in lecture and in lab. I've been teaching at the college for a long time. This is my 35th year teaching. I actually was born and bred in Iowa, where I did my undergraduate work at a small four-year school called Loras College in Dubuque, which is along the Mississippi River. I got my bachelor's in biology in 1984 from there, and then I transferred to Ames, Iowa, where I went to Iowa State University for my graduate degree, which is in zoology, and I graduated there in 1987. So I've been teaching at the Olean campus for, as I say, about 35 years, 34 years plus. I teach a variety of courses, A&P1, A&P2, although I haven't done that course in a number of years. Human bio, I've taught zoology, I've taught microbiology. I'm teaching that actually now. I'll have some of you in there if you're nursing students. I teach tropical biology, which is a course that I actually co-teach with a faculty member from the Jamestown campus, and we go down to Costa Rica and Panama over our spring recess. And I've been doing that course for close to 20 years. Unfortunately, due to the COVID pandemic, we had to cancel our last trip, but hope to get down there again soon. It's one of my favorite places. I live in Randolph. My wife works on the Jamestown campus in the Career and Counseling Center. I have two daughters. I am a beekeeper. I have 6 beehives. So that's a little kind of a side hobby of mine. I enjoy photography. I enjoy outdoor things, anything outdoors actually. And I look forward to spending again the next semester or so with you guys in A&P1. So let me again take a moment and share my syllabus with you. You can of course download this in the Blackboard course shell. It's one of the, I think it's the first document in under the content heading once you get into that Blackboard course shell. So I've listed here the lecture Monday, Wednesday, 1:15 to 2:30 in room 204, which is just down the hall from my office in the Allied Health and Science Center. And then right across from that is the biology lab, room 203, where you'll have lab on Thursday morning. My office is room 220, Allied Health and Science Center. So if you just go down the hall from the lecture room and the lab, go down to the opposite end of the hallway and go left, there's a suite of offices, and mine is the second from the end. Here's my phone number if you want to ever call me, my email. These are my 8 office hours that I will be present in my office in room 220. I'm actually here for many other additional hours than just those 8 listed, but each faculty member at JCC, full-time faculty member, must maintain 8 office hours. Part-time or adjunct instructors have to maintain 1 office hour for every 3 credit hour course they teach. So if you have an adjunct part-timer for, say, a laboratory, they have to be on campus 1 hour a week, 1 office hour a week, so that you can meet with them if you have questions. The prereq for this course is either high school chemistry or our introduction to chemistry, Chem 1500. So we expect that you've had some basic chemistry. And if you haven't, you should talk to me about that. We also have as a pre or co-requisite Comp 1. So a lot of you have either taken that or maybe are taking it this semester. This note that you see next just simply talks about the fact that if you need the sequential A&P 1 and A&P 2 courses, that you probably take those two courses at one school. In other words, most of you are going to take A&P 1 and A&P 2 here at JCC, so that's not an issue. But if you know in the spring, for example, you're going to transfer to UB or Damon or Duville or wherever, and you take A&P 1 here, that may or may not transfer in as A&P 1 at Damon or Duville or UB or wherever you're transferring to. Sometimes we can run into issues with regard to transferability equivalency. So my word of wisdom is make sure you take your sequential A&P 1, 2 at one school. Because if you mix and match, there's no guarantee you're going to get away with taking just 2 semesters worth of A&P. Okay, the textbooks that we're going to be using this semester are Hole's Human Anatomy and Physiology. This is the newest edition, the 16th edition. This is a McGraw-Hill publisher. This is a 2022 text. So this is the first semester we're using the 16th edition. If you have access to the 15th edition, you can use that as well. There's very little change between the 16th and the 15th editions. And I might go so far as to say even the 14th edition couldn't be used. Now, there are some minor changes that they've made with each succeeding edition. So if you end up using a 15th or even a 14th, you may want to borrow my book to make sure all of the readings are equivalent. In other words, they may update those in the new edition, and you won't have those updates if you have an older edition textbook. But 99% of the rest of the material will be fine. It's what we call the clinical applications and from science to technology boxes that are incorporated within the chapters that sometimes change from edition to edition. So just speak with me about that if you're using an older textbook edition, and we'll talk more about that. With respect to the lab manual, and by the way, these texts we're talking about here are good for both A&P 1, Bio 2510, and A&P 2, Bio 2520. The lab book looks something like this. I'm not exactly sure this is the exact cover, but it's going to have, I think, a picture of sort of like a brain inside an outlined head. This is a customized version of the book that accompanies the text. So this is actually the unedited, uncustomized lab book. What we tried to do is to save you some money by taking this and only printing those exercises that are going to be used in our A&P 1 and A&P 2 courses, thus culminating in a customized version of that particular lab book, which is quite a bit cheaper. So again, you can go to the JCC bookstore online and find all of these available. And if you can get the textbook, for example, from a different source, from Chegg or from some other online source, you're welcome to purchase it there as well. But if you're getting the lab book, you can't get this anywhere but from the JCC bookstore, because again, it is a customized. It's got a special ISBN number. They're printing it just for JCC. You could, however, buy this book if you want as well. It's basically the same thing. You may be paying a little bit more, but this is Hole's A&P Laboratory Manual, 16th edition by Snyder and Martin. So again, another alternative, I guess, if you didn't want to go through the JCC bookstore to get this, you could buy that. Okay. So as we'll be talking about a little bit later when we get into the lecture and lab schedules, I will be giving you a list of what chapters we're going to be covering in the thick lecture text, as well as what exercises we'll be doing in the lab manual. So some people like to look that over before coming into class. Others prefer to take the lecture notes and lab notes and then go back and read that later. So it's totally up to you how you want to approach this. But obviously you spent some pretty significant money on these books, so you should be using them. They're very, very good books, and you should be spending time reading them. With regard to the grade, the course grade, basically what we're going to be looking at are two different main parts to the course. One is the lecture, and the other, of course, is the lab. So let's talk first about the lecture component of the course. You'll be taking 4 lecture exams about every 4 weeks or so in this semester. The format of those basically consists of multiple choice, some matching, perhaps some short answer, and typically several essay questions. I give you an opportunity to choose which essays you want to answer. But that's the basic format of the lecture exams. In addition, we're going to be having 10 lecture quizzes. These will be worth 5 points apiece. We'll talk about the lecture exam points in just a moment. But these quizzes are 5 points, not a heck of a lot of points, but nonetheless, every point counts, right? So these are going to be sprinkled throughout the semester about every week or so. And we'll get into that specificity in just a moment. But we take those at the very beginning of lecture, and they will cover material since the preceding quiz. Because we take this quiz right at the very beginning of class, you've got to make sure you are in class, sitting, ready to go. If you walk in 5 minutes late, 6 minutes late, you forfeit the right to take the quiz. And it'll be the one that you'll drop. You're going to actually be dropping 2 quizzes, 2 of the lowest graded quizzes. But if you come in late, you get a 0 for that quiz. That's going to be one of the 2 you drop. So this is a little incentive to make sure you're in class, ready to go at 1:15. Okay, because that's when I'm going to be giving out the quiz. And I give you generally 5-10 minutes to take the quiz, and then we hand them in, and then we continue with lecture. In addition to the 4 exams and the 10 quizzes, of which we drop 2, there will be one 30-point chemistry exam. This will be a multiple choice exam. It will be given in class on Wednesday, September 8th, as you see here, and it will cover the material presented in Chapter 2 of the textbook. I will not be lecturing on the chemical basis of life chapter. So you're going to have to go into that chapter and read that and refresh your memory with regard to the basic concepts of chemistry. Now, as we'll talk about later, I do have some study objectives for each chapter, including Chapter 2. So you might very well use the study objectives for Chapter 2 to help guide you through that chapter in preparation for that 30-point, 30-question chemistry exam. So it's coming up in a couple weeks. And so between now and September 8th, you're going to want to be getting into that chapter, start reading it over, maybe again using those study objectives for Chapter 2 to guide you so that you're prepared for that 30 multiple choice question exam. Okay. I will not be giving you the entire 75 minutes to take that exam. Generally, people are done within, I'd say, 20-30 minutes at the most. And so then when everybody's done, we'll continue on with lecture there on the 8th. So those are the 3 major components with regard to the lecture segment of the course. Now let's shift gears and talk a little bit about the lab. In lab, we've got several different things that we're going to be doing. We're going to be having 3 lab practicals. I will talk more about those coming up as we get closer to the first one, but they're going to be kind of like big quizzes. And it's going to cover several exercises. So more on that a little bit later. We have 1 lab report that you're going to be typing up. This particular exercise that we're going to do, exercise 1 on the scientific method and measurements, we will be doing during week 2 of lab. And then you'll have a week to type that up and hand it in to me on the 9th. So you're going to have a week to write it up. I am going to go over the scientific lab report, the format of that report with you. on the 2nd, the day we do the actual experiment. So just be aware that there's one lab report, that you have 1 week to turn it in. And I believe that's worth 25 points, right? We have 8 lab quizzes. These are going to be worth 10 points each. We will be taking those at the beginning of lab. So again, please make sure you are there ready to go at the beginning of lab for those quizzes. Because if you come in late, you forfeit the right to take the quiz. You're going to get a 0. It'll be the one you drop. And we will drop the lowest of the 8 lab quizzes. So more on those in terms of the times and the days coming up once we get to the end of the syllabus. And then finally, an instructor evaluation grade. Even though I have it listed under lab segment, I really view this instructor evaluation grade as being not just lab, but really the entire course, where you look at your attendance, your participation. Are you engaged in the course? Are you participating in discussions? Do you ever ask questions? And really, there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to get 20 out of 20 for that lab evaluation, instructor evaluation. But I am looking for some participation. I am looking for some engagement on your part for not just the lab, but also for the lecture too. So now we come to the summary of points from both the lab and the lecture parts. And as you can see here, here are the 3 practicals. Let's go to this side first. The first practical worth 50 points, the second and third each worth 60. Here's our 25-point lab report. Here are the 7 lab quizzes. Remember, we're taking 8, but we're dropping 1. So that's 70 points. And then, of course, 20 points for the instructor evaluation for a total of 285 possible points for lab. As we get over here then to the lecture side of the summary, we've got the 4 exams here, the first 2 of which are worth 80, and the second and third exams, third and fourth exams are worth 100 points. So we're upping the ante a little bit in terms of points. Here's our 30-point chemistry exam, and here are the lecture quizzes. So if we add up the total number of points from lecture and the total number of points from lab, that comes to a grand total of 715 possible points. So at the end of the semester, what I basically do is I will tally up your points from lecture and lab. I'll see where you fall. This will correspond to a % of the total, and that will in turn correspond to a given course grade. So as you can see here, between 90 and 100% of the total possible points gets the A, between 75 and 80% of the possible points gets a C+, and so on and so forth. You can easily monitor your progress in the course by simply adding up all of the points you've accumulated in lecture and lab and divide that by the total possible. That will give you a percentage, and that will give you a corresponding grade. And so I really highly encourage you to keep track of your points. Now, in the Grade Center of Blackboard, I will be recording all of these different grades, so you can go there and monitor your progress. You can find your scores, you can see your totals, and so on and so forth. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. Let's talk about some important notes. The first one simply gets at the idea that if you've had some biology prior to A&P, that's going to be to your benefit. I think you probably all have had high school bio. I hope you have. Maybe some of you have taken some other college-related bio courses like Principles of Bio or Human Bio. These are great stepping stones, if you will, into anatomy and physiology. I will be taking attendance throughout the semester. I typically will pass around a sheet at the beginning of class rather than read your names like I will the first day. I don't have time to do that every day, so I will simply pass around a sheet. You will sign your name. I'll get that sheet at the end of the class. I will, then go to my roster and I will put a check mark next to your name because you showed up in class that day. I have to do that for financial aid purposes and census reasons. The State University of New York requires us to do that. Plus, we all know that students that come to class generally do better in class, right? There's a definite correlation. So you should take attendance extremely seriously. I do, however, allow you 3 unexcused absences from the course. If you exceed the 3 unexcused absences, you will be facing a 10-point deduction for each subsequent unexcused absence. So if you have a good reason why you missed class, that would be viewed as an excused absence. But if you want to go skiing at Holiday Valley 3 times, I'm not going to ask you where you've been. I'm going to expect that you've gotten the notes from somebody of the classes you've missed, or if you have missed a lab, that you've made arrangements to make that lab up, and I'll talk more about that in just a moment. But you really don't want to be missing lab or lecture, really, but I am allowing this policy. But be aware that if you exceed that, you're facing some penalty. Number 3, this gets at lab. I do, as I said, take lab extremely seriously. I would not blow off lab at all, because you have to make that lab up if you miss it. Some of these are difficult to make up on your own. Some can be done that way. Others are very, very difficult to do. So my word of wisdom is do not miss lab. If you do miss lab because of illness or some other family emergency, and things do come up, then I would expect that you would notify me within 24 hours of the missed lab. That can be through email, through a phone call. I want to hear from you within 1 day of the missed lab. And then you need to talk with me about getting that lab made up within a week of having missed that lab. And so I'm going to look for 2 things. If you miss lab, I'm going to look for you to contact me, and I'm going to look for you to make that lab up in that week's grace period, if you will. If you fail to do either of those 2, you will face, again, unfortunately, some point deduction from your total end of semester points. So as I say here, it's your responsibility to follow up on this. If you miss a lab or even a lecture, that you contact me, but I'm particularly concerned about labs. Okay. Be aware that if you know ahead of time that you have something going on and you're going to be missing a lab for a doctor's appointment, or your child needs to go to the doctor's for a shot or whatever, and you're going to be missing that Thursday morning lab, I do have 2 other lab sections, A&P1 lab sections, that maybe we could put you in, so at least you could, take that other lab section and make up what you missed. So there's a Monday night and there's a Tuesday night. I'm actually teaching this Tuesday evening lab section. So I have no problem, and I don't think the adjunct, the part-timer teaching the Monday lab would have any trouble with you going into her section or going into my section. But you don't assume that. You need to contact me so I can make arrangements with her, or I can make sure I have enough room in my Tuesday night lab that you can come in and make up that lab. So that would be the best possible thing if you miss a class, is to try to get into one of the other lab sections. You got to be aware, though, that the day lab and the night labs, because of the days, might not be in synchrony because of Memorial or Labor Day, fall recess. Things throw weeks off in terms of scheduling. So I might be ahead in the night lab, or I might be behind in the day class, or what have you, depending upon how the semester pans out. So the sooner we can determine this, the better. Number 4 simply talks about the cheating policy. I'm not going to bother to read this. You can read this over. It's very, very important to make sure you're aware of the policy. Anybody observed cheating, or anybody knowing of some other students cheating, you have the legal obligation, if you witness cheating, to let me know about that. So this is pretty serious stuff. You don't want to be going down that road. Number 5, make-up exams given under extraordinary circumstances. If you miss a lecture exam, I can offer you a makeup. However, it will be given during the last couple of days of the semester. We call it finals week, but there's really only 2 days to finals week this semester. And you might be facing an all essay makeup. So I would simply avoid missing any lecture exams, if at all possible. If you miss a lecture or lab quiz because of illness or whatever, I will assume that will be a dropped quiz. There will not be any makeup lecture or lab quizzes. Number 6, coming into class, lecture or lab late is something to be avoided. Sometimes it's really tough to find a parking spot perhaps, or the train comes across North Union Street just as you get here and you're 2 minutes away from class starting and you're rushing to find a parking spot. You know, things happen. Roads are slippery because of ice or snow. You know, I certainly understand that. So I'd much rather have you come in a few minutes late than not come at all. But you know, if you're somebody that is kind of chronically late, or you hit that snooze button 2 or 3 times, you know, set your time a little bit earlier or whatever, make adjustments so that you can be here on time, because coming into class late on a regular sort of basis is really disruptive to me as an instructor. And more importantly, it's disruptive to others in the class when they have to kind of stop and look around, and you know, they're focused on what I'm talking about or doing whatever. And then people walk in, it just takes away from the focus, if you will, of the course, of the class. So I would just ask you to please avoid that. If you can avoid it, great. But if it happens once in a while, it's not critical. Number 7, again, classroom decorum. I'll let you look that over and read that over. That's pretty self-explanatory. Number 8 simply talks about, please make sure your cell phone is turned off. If, however, you have just dropped off your daughter at daycare and she wasn't feeling good, and you're expecting a potential phone call from them asking you to pick her up, that's obviously fine. You know, if you would just kind of let me know before class starts that you're going to have your phone on vibrate, or you're going to need to perhaps step out of the classroom to take that phone call, that's just, you know, not an issue at all. It's common courtesy, right? That's what we're talking about here. So again, I'll expect that you are not texting in class. That's a good way to lose points. We'll talk more about that a little bit later. Number 9, this says make alternate plans for daycare, that kind of thing. Number 10, the biology lab will be open throughout the semester, throughout the week, where if you want to come in when there's not a class in there and review the models, look at the slides in preparation for a quiz or a lab practical or what have you, that is perfectly acceptable. I encourage you. I love to see students in the bio lab reviewing the models, preparing for that quiz, preparing for that lab practical. Although you can use that lab to study for your psych quiz coming up. If you just want a quiet place to escape to, you can go in the bio lab and make it your own. It's not a problem. There's also 2 PCs in there too at the back of the lab, which you're welcome to use. And there's a printer in there as well. Down the hall from the biology lab, there's a quiet study room, which has a large conference table and a big whiteboard. And I think there might even be a small refrigerator in there, and maybe even microwave. So you're welcome to use, and I encourage you to use the group study room. Study groups are great ways to learn the material. It's a fun way to get together with like-minded students as they review the material each week in preparation again for quizzes or exams. So I'm a super big proponent of group study. Make use of that room. It's labeled, you'll see it on the hallway door there, group study room. Use it. Right next to the lecture room is the quiet study room. And that has, I think, 3 PCs in there, which you're welcome to use. This is adjacent to the lecture room. And so we want to keep the noise down in that quiet study room. That's why it's called the quiet study room. There's also a printer in there, which you're welcome to use as well. So check out the quiet study room and the group study room and make use of them and be reviewing the lab material. You should be doing that. Doing well in the course means ample outside review. Here are the Allied Health and Science Center building hours. This should really read Monday through Thursday, 7 to 9, not 10. So I need to go in and change that. And then Friday, 7 to 5. So if you want to come in again and review, those are the hours. The college will be closed for Labor Day and also the week of Thanksgiving. I'll spend some time in lab going through the Blackboard course shell and showing you some stuff in there that you're going to want to be aware of. And I'll be asking you to print and bring certain documents to lab each week. I will not be providing that for you. So you're going to have to go in and print this stuff off. And my suggestion is to print it off all at once. Get everything printed off. Use a 3-hole punch, perhaps. Put all those documents in a small, folder, and bring that folder with you each week to lab, and you're good. So more on that coming up a little bit later. We'll go over Blackboard and what's in it. Number 13, emergency closing procedures. If the college needs to be closed due to weather or some other foreseen reason, you can be instantly notified through text or message, phone message, if you sign up for this JCC alert. So I've given you there a link that you can go to. It's really the way to go. Rather than relying on news media, although you can do that too, for cancellation of classes or closure of the college, just sign up for the JCC alert and get an instant text message, and you'll know quicker than anybody what's going on. So I highly encourage you to sign up for that. If we had a quiz or an exam, for example, scheduled the day that the college was closed, then you need to know that the next time we meet, be it lecture or lab, that's when the quiz or the practical or the exam or whatever it might be will be administered. Okay, so just be aware of that. And as I've indicated here also, check your email, because I will likely send out a kind of a mass email to the class, kind of updating you as to what you should be looking at in preparation for the next class, or what we would have covered that day in class had we met. So check your email, check announcements on Blackboard for potential posted information. Late assignment policy. Basically, I'd like you to make sure you get things turned in when they're due. There aren't a heck of a lot of things we're talking about here in the lab report, as we talked about earlier. You get a week to type that up and turn that in. So don't turn it in late, because if you turn it in late, you're not going to get any credit for it. So I'm a stickler when it comes to having things turned in when they're due. And number 15, expectations of students. You can kind of look that over. There's the student responsibility and academic integrity, civility statement, expectations of students, and your rights as a student, and so on and so forth. Check out the Constitution PDF there. Number 16, special incentive. Any student going into the 4th exam, which is the final here, having scored 90% or above, will be exempt from having to take the 4th exam and will receive an automatic A for the course. Okay, so you still have to take the 3rd lab practical. Basically, you have to take all the quizzes and all the practicals except for the 4th lecture exam. So going into that 4th lecture exam, if you have 90% or more of the possible points, you don't have to take the 4th exam and you will automatically get an A for the course. So something to be aware of. I usually have several students each semester that take advantage of this special incentive. So just wanted to make you aware of that. Services available to students, the Learning Commons. This is the new terminology we're using this semester. They basically have taken the library, the Learning Center, and the Accessibility Services Center, and they've grouped them all together in the LLAC building. Now, the LLAC building is the building on the very opposite end of the campus from the Science Center. It's next to the big parking lot. And on the first floor of LLAC, as you first walk in to the left, is the Learning Commons. And I would certainly recommend you walk in there, familiarize yourself with the Learning Center, with the library. There are the hours posted and the phone number if you need to call. The Learning Center is run by Beth Lisi. She's the coordinator of the Learning Center. And she can help you with things like test anxiety, study skills, things of that sort. Feel free to stop by and talk to Beth. We also have 2 peer tutors there this semester, Kira Nolder and Sadie Hood, who've both taken A&P 1 with me and done extremely well in the course. They are very, very good students and would be happy to sit down with you and go over any questions you might have. And you can, again, check out their hours. I'm not sure exactly when they're there throughout the week, but they'll be posting their hours soon. And you can either stop by or call, find out. You can meet with them one-on-one, or you can do a Zoom tutoring session as well. So take advantage of Kira and Sadie over in the Learning Center. Don Poole is the coordinator of our Accessibility Services Office. So if you require any sort of special accommodations for taking tests, or if you have any sort of disability that might prevent you from seeing the board or reading your text, there are certain services that Don can provide you with to aid you in that process. So I gave you this information from Don. There's his email, his phone number. So talk with him if you need to do that. This just kind of gets at to make the most of your appointment with Sadie or Kira or Beth. College can be stressful and rewarding at the same time. This course has its reputation of being a difficult course, and it certainly is a difficult course. But if you keep up with your reading, if you keep up with your studying, there's no reason why you can't do well in A&P. But I think one of the most important things that students need to understand is that to succeed in this course, or really any course, you have to have good time management skills. If you are unable to manage your time efficiently, you're going to run into problems. The other thing I would say is, if you know you're going to be taking a full load of courses and you're going to be working 30 hours a week and expecting to get A's in all your courses, that could be an unrealistic goal or expectation. So you need to be realistic in terms of, can I work the number of hours I want to work, and can I maintain the grades that I need to maintain to get into nursing or to get into physical therapy assistant or whatever the case may be. So again, good to pause and kind of ponder this carefully. They used to say for every hour of in-person instruction, you should be spending at least 2 hours of outside of class review. They no longer really talk about that ratio of 2 to 1, but I don't think it's unrealistic to expect that for some courses like A&P, you might have to spend twice as much time outside of class as in class to really begin to grasp and master the material. Maybe it's 3 times as much time outside of class as inside of class. It really, really depends, and you're going to have to gauge this as you proceed through the semester. But I would simply say that if you take the first lecture quiz or the first lab quiz and you don't do so hot on it, don't get all worried about that. It's just one quiz. You're dropping a couple, right? But if you take 2 or 3 quizzes and you're doing really poorly in all of the quizzes, or you take the first exam and you blow it, you know, that's the time to stop and ask yourself, why did I get the answers wrong that I did? Did I not spend nearly as much time studying as I should have? Did I not understand how the question was worded? Did I get it down to 2 answers and I just happened to choose the wrong one? There's a myriad of reasons why students get problems wrong. But ultimately, it's important to intervene early in the process. If you come to me at the end of November after Thanksgiving with only 3 weeks left, and you've done really poorly in the course, there's not enough points left for you to pass, perhaps. So what I'm trying to say is if you don't do so hot on the first few quizzes, the first exam, even the first practical, it's important that you talk with me and we make some changes so we can get you back on track for success in this course. Because ANP2 is not any easier, micro is not any easier. This is going to get you ready for some other biology classes, and when you get into nursing, it's even more stressful. So we want to make sure you get a good firm foundation established so that we can build on that. So that's what kind of this talks a little bit about. We have a career and counseling center in the College Center building, so you can make use of any counseling that you might like to chat with folks over there about how you're doing in your classes or just life stress in general. We also have a new success navigator. Megan O'Brien is her name. She's new to the college, and she can also be found in the Counseling and Career Planning Center. Again, her name is Megan O'Brien. And as a success navigator, she can sit down with you and work on any number of different things, including resume building and that sort of thing. Extra credit. Okay, so we do have one optional extra credit that you can make use of. It is basically a research paper worth a possible 25 points. The major stipulation I have with regard to the topic is that it directly connects with some topic or organ system that we talk about in ANP1 in Bio 2510. Okay. You need to okay your topic with me before you get started on your research. I also don't want 5 people doing the same topic, so that's why I want to talk to you about what you're going to do. It's sort of a first come, first served sort of thing in terms of your topic. This is not a high school extra credit research paper. It's a college level extra credit research paper. So you need to make sure that it is going above and beyond the level of information presented in the textbook. You will want to make sure that you are writing it using proper documentation, proper spelling, proper sentence structure, and so forth. Now, all of you will have had Comp 1 toward the end of this course, and a lot of you have already had it probably, or maybe you're into Comp 2 right now at the same time you're taking ANP1. And if you need help, the folks in the Learning Commons can assist you, and also the library, in both researching and writing the paper. They can guide you through the process. They can look at various, versions of your research paper and try to catch those sentence structure or punctuation issues if you know you're prone to those sorts of things. So what I'm saying is this needs to be a well-written college level research paper. And while I don't specify number of pages here for this, I would expect, excluding the cover page and the list of works cited or bibliography at the very end of the paper, that this be at least 8 to 10 typewritten pages, meaning no photographs, no big tables would be part of those 8 to 10. Now you can include photographs and tables, but again, those would not be part of the 8 to 10 full typewritten pages, double spaced, Times New Roman. Font size 12, I think, is pretty standard, if you're wondering about that sort of thing. I'm looking for a minimum of 5 sources with no more than 4 electronic sources. So I'm going to actually amend that. I'm not going to specify that you have to have a hard copy source, but I do want any sources you use, any online sources that you use, they have to be reputable sources, and I want you to print off those sections of those sources that you directly use in your paper, and I want you to highlight with a highlighter those particular sections of those sources that you used. This is to prevent you from plagiarizing. Okay, so just please be aware of the policy. Photocopied and or printed off, highlighted areas shown. The due date for the choice of topic is November 17th, which I think is just before our Thanksgiving break. And finally, the due date, the beginning of class on Wednesday, the 8th. No papers accepted beyond the 8th at 1:15. So make sure you have that done by that due date and time. Okay, we've talked about A&P being a very challenging course. Here are a few things to think about with regard to how you might succeed in a course like A&P. Coming to class regularly, again, critical. If you do miss a class, make sure you get the notes from somebody. Spending ample time reviewing, especially for lab-related materials and topics. Review, review, review. That's really, really critical. You have to be reviewing your course material constantly. What I used to do when I was in college for my science classes was I would take lecture notes in blue pen on my thin line ruler paper. And then I would leave enough space between major topics that were discussed in class so that when I went home that night and I read over chapter 8 in the textbook, I could take the text information and I could write that into those spaces that I left, right? And I'd write that in red pen. That would supplement and strengthen and help clarify the professor's notes that I took. So that when I studied for the quiz or the exam, I had my lecture notes in blue and I had my supplemental textbook notes in red. And that worked really, really well for me. So this gets back to the idea of time management, having the ability to take good notes, as well as I was reviewing that again and again and again, constantly reviewing it. So that is just really super important. Study groups, you've heard me talk a little bit about that already. You've got the big study group room that you should make use of. By reading, we learn information, right? We read the textbook, we learn it. We hear the teacher explain a particular physiologic process. That's another modality, right? Reading, using the eyes, hearing, using the ears, and a third modality that can help strengthen and reinforce information in the brain is speaking. So teaching, explaining concepts to others can help reinforce and strengthen your knowledge of the material. And that's why study groups can be so, so critical. If you have a group of 4 or 5 students, then what you should do is you should alternate leaders, if you will. So one day, one student kind of leads the group. He gets up, starts writing stuff on the whiteboard, explains the process to the rest. Of course, there's interaction, there's discussion, there's questions, whatever. The next time they get together, a different student takes the lead, if you will, and is in charge of, using the whiteboard or whatever, and explaining and walking through, talking through the process. talking through the material. I'm here to tell you that is the best way to learn it, and it's the most fun way too. So I'm a super big advocate of study groups, and students that are in study groups do better academically than those that don't. I'm not saying you have to be in a study group to succeed in the course, but students who are in them enjoy the course more, and they generally do better than if they had not joined. Don't be afraid to ask questions. I'm not an expert. If I don't know the answer, I'll try to find out. Make use of outside resources. We'll be talking in lab about the ADAM interactive physiology software and where you can find that and what that is. So more on that coming up a little bit later. This, however, can only be accessed from PCs on campus. You cannot get to the interactive physiology from home. Looking over the material before coming into class. Some people like to do that. Others prefer to read the material afterwards. I'll be showing you some lecture outlines and chapter PowerPoints when we talk about this in Blackboard, what's available in Blackboard a little bit later. Lab coming up. So there's all sorts of things to be aware of. One last thing that I just want to mention, and it really was sort of addressed way back here in the notes section under the electronic devices. I just want to put out a little disclaimer here as well, and that is in regard to texting. I do not want to see people texting in class, in lecture or lab. That's a great way to lose points, because I will deduct points if I see people texting, because what it tells me is that you're more interested in communicating with your friend than you are being in class. So I sort of take it as a personal I take it personally, let's put it that way. So if I see you texting, I'm not going to ask you to stop. I'm not going to even acknowledge that I know you text, because I can pretty much tell when people are texting. Don't text in class. Just don't do it. If you do it, you're going to get dinged. Okay, let's go on next to the lecture schedule. So here we have the weekly topic schedule and corresponding chapters. Now we're talking here about the textbook, right? Lecture. So we have about 17 weeks in the semester. Several of these we have no class. So we have actually 15 instructional weeks. And so what you see again is the corresponding chapter number and chapter title. So in the first week, we will get through chapter 1 and we'll get into the start of chapter 3. And in week 2, we'll wrap up 3 and we'll start 4. Okay, you get the idea. I've also indicated in red or in yellow the quiz dates for the lectures. So the first lecture quiz will be on, I think that's a Wednesday, September 1st, right? And that will be over material we will have covered the preceding week, Monday and Wednesday. So this is the first week of class. That quiz on the 1st will be over material presented during Monday and Wednesday of this week, and the material presented on Monday of the second week, because this is a Wednesday. So basically anything that precedes the quiz is fair game for the quiz. Okay. I've also shown you here the chemistry exam date. We talked about that earlier on the 8th of September. Notice in green, I've outlined the 4 exam dates. Those are pretty much locked in place. So you can kind of tell what we're doing each week, what topics we're going to be getting into, when there are lecture quizzes, when there are lecture exams, and so on and so forth. I will make every effort to remind you of upcoming quizzes or exams, but if I forget, that's not an excuse. You're still responsible for being prepared for those quizzes or exams. But generally, we do certainly talk about the exams. Okay. Again, this final exam should really be fourth exam. I don't really have a formal final in the sense of it being cumulative. It's just over material since the third exam. So none of these exams are cumulative. They just cover material since the preceding exam. And then finally, we come to the lab schedule. Now, the Thursday afternoon lab here has been canceled. So we're talking here about the Thursday morning only. I'll amend this a little bit later. But the schedule pretty much is something we will adhere to. So again, here are the dates. These are all Thursdays. I have also indicated, of course, the topics and the corresponding lab exercise numbers in the lab book. So you can see kind of what we're doing each week. If at all possible, try to look ahead. I'm not saying you have to know everything there is to know about the lab before walking in, but if you're at least somewhat familiar with what we're going to do, that would be really, really good. The lab quiz dates are indicated by these little black asterisks. Okay, so you can see that at the very bottom here of the lab schedule. Those are lab quizzes. So our first lab quiz will be on the 9th. That will cover basically what we did on the 26th and on the 2nd of September. And I could put a question on the day of the quiz, something related to the exercises that we're doing that day. Mostly to see if you've read ahead, okay? So while the majority of the points on this quiz on the 9th will be over exercises 1 and 2 and what we did the preceding 2 weeks, I might ask you a general question on the rat dissection and on exercise 4, care and use of the microscope, to see if you've looked ahead. The second lab quiz on the 16th is going to cover primarily the rat dissection and the microscope, but I reserve the right to ask a question or two related to what we're going to be doing the day of the quiz. So you should be looking at exercises 5, 6, and 7 and be familiar with what we're going to be doing that day. Not that you have to memorize all of 5, 6, and 7. That's not the purpose. The purpose is to look it over and be somewhat familiar with what we're going to be doing that day. You do not need to know anything for quiz number 2 related to exercises 1 or 2. Okay, you already were quizzed on that in the first quiz. So again, the quizzes are not cumulative. The first lab practical on the 30th of September are going to be over all of these exercises, 1, 2, 4 through 10. And as I said earlier, we'll talk more about those lab practicals and what they involve coming up as we get closer to that date. Okay. And that's pretty much the syllabus. I'm sure I haven't answered all of the questions you might have, so certainly feel free to ask as we go through the semester. But I did want to take some time here to kind of go over this, to have you watch this Zoom recording. Ordinarily, I would take time in the first day of class to talk about this, but I'm going to try something new this year. I'm going to obviously tape this, ask you to watch it, and then that will free up time for us to kind of get into some of the more important things related to the actual course material once we start to get together next week. So thank you for watching. Again, this will be posted on Blackboard, and you should definitely check it out sometime in the first week of class.